Hello, my name is Michael. Thank you so much to our previous speakers. I do want to say that before starting off, I did do that box breathing technique and it was absolutely helpful. Thank you. So I will be speaking on internet gaming disorder, IGD. And I was asked to speak about this topic because it is increasing in prevalence within our societies. It is very interesting because it affects all peoples, regardless of age, gender, and social economic status. I am a registered social worker under the province of Ontario, and I work as a rehabilitation and behavioral therapist. And some of my clients or patients have struggled with gaming addiction. I also work with my wife. We run a social media marketing firm, and it requires us to really understand the internet user behavior through electronics and devices, what makes them engage and watch, comment, stay on a platform, increase retention. So it is quite ironic because on one hand, I do love to work with clients that have compassion in the area of gaming addiction. And on the other hand, I help in creating marketing advertisements with tech companies and even video game companies in promoting video games and technologies that you can use to play video games. So what I would like to offer you is a very holistic, fair approach here towards this topic. I have three learning objectives to learn about IGD. So in this presentation, I will be referring to internet gaming disorder as IGD or even just gaming addiction. I will be sharing some of its symptoms, risks, and current research. So IGD was formalized by the World Health Organization, classified under their International Classification of Diseases in 2018 as a disease. And in terms of the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistics Manual number 5, it is a temporary disease and more research is encouraged. So right now there is a lot of new emergent research going around about this particular area of study. So in this presentation, I'd like to focus primarily on elements of environment that play a role that can precipitate addictive gaming behaviors. So I think the environment is very important. I know both actually Dr. Perry, Dr. Coe, and Dr. Tham alluded to this holistic approach to biopsychosocial spiritual models, and also present at the end learn actionable steps that you can use to encourage and equip those affected by addictive gaming behaviors. And I say addictive gaming behaviors because we have to be careful that we're not diagnosing our loved ones, but we can see signs and symptoms related to IGD. So we'll get into that. Let's move on to the next slide. So addiction is a multifactorial disease, meaning that it's multifaceted. There are elements of personality, elements of biology, and elements of the environment. And it's very different from a substance use disease. In fact, the American Psychiatric Association concluded the concept of gaming, video game addiction, and the pathways leading to it are not entirely clear. That's in 2022. So that is a stance right now. Right now, we do not fully understand why some people might be more prone to the addictive tendencies and why some people may not be. So again, I will share right now the three things in which it is not. It is not a substance use disease, even though there may be some similarities, but research has suggested that these similarities are not consistent in terms of how we react to video game addiction. So for example, you may have persistent cravings, chronic, oh, I want to play games, I want to play games. You may even lose control over time. Another thing that video game addiction is not is that it is not 100% solely individual choice. So that means you cannot say, hey, you have a character flaw because you're playing too many video games. because even though early use may have been choice, there are many environmental factors that might precipitate early use as well. But late use, there is research to suggest that the autonomy of choice can be taken away, similar to substance use addictions, where you know that there are negative consequences, but you have no control to stop it. The third thing that it is not is that it is not definitively genetic, meaning that you cannot say, I was just born this way. I'm just prone to video gaming, so I am addicted to video games. I can't help it. Now, there is research right now going into the epigenetic mechanisms, which means it's a relationship of how your actions and environment can change your biology, and how in turn the biology can then again change your actions. And there's research right now ongoing about the neuroplasticity. I know Dr. Tham spoke a lot about that. And it's important to know, based on the current research right now, that genes do play a strong, powerful factors in terms of how some folks might be more prone to gaming addiction than others. And so we did speak a little bit about dopamine. We learned that it's created from the gut, and we have different dopaminergic pathways in our bodies. Dopamine influences our movement, learning, attention, and emotion. It is a type of neurotransmitter and a hormone in our body. And one of its functions is to mediate feelings of pleasure and reward. So let me give you two examples here. One is I played a mobile game just for 3 minutes, and it was a crossword game. And the moment I made an account and I went in and I logged in, I played it, it was very soothing, great, bright colors, soothing music. And every time I got a word correct, there was a chime that congratulated me and said, good job, I got coins. And when I completed a level, I was shown a treasure box and I got coins. And with these coins, I can purchase more things. There were so many events in just 3 minutes that made me feel accomplished. So dopamine plays a role in feeling achievement. So you might have heard the terminology or the saying, there's a surge of dopamine in the brain. I did something, I felt good, and I got a surge of dopamine. Another example, my son, he's in grade 4, and he came to me after school one day and said, can I play the clicker game? And I asked him, what's the clicker game? And he said, everyone in my class plays the clicker game. And I said, okay, show me, how do you play it? And he got on the web browser, and it was basically a game. You just click, and you just click the same item again and again and again, and you get treasures and money. And his whole class was playing it, actually. And those are examples of how video games can give you these triggers to make you feel good and feel achievement. So research is showing, there's studies how different individuals, that based on biology, we have different tendencies in which we could be more prone to compulsive tendencies. For example, eating, binge eating, shopping, gambling. And I mentioned shopping and gambling because there's many, many elements of shopping and gambling built into our games. There's also different personality traits in which are more prone to video game addictions. And there are also elements of environment. So I will be sharing very specifically with the elements of environment. For example, stress and trauma. Video gaming may be a coping mechanism to numb the pain. Perhaps it's isolation, boredom, and loneliness. Now, there is a contention here because in Ontario, the very first of its kind in North America, there was an e-sports arena at Durham College. And so you can see that it's interesting where there's one side of this where we are putting money and promoting and actually integrating it into our school systems. And on the other side, it's an addiction. And it's fascinating. And I'll get to this. It has to do with the modality of this disease. It has to do with the modality of it. And I'll explain that and why it's different from other sports that, let's say, soccer or football. So addiction and internet gaming disorder, this is from the American Psychiatric Association in 2022. Based on several studies, they concluded around 86% of young adults aged 18 to 24 and 65% of all adults have actually engaged in video games in the past month, and some form of video games. And researchers found that it was very small, 0.3 to 1, and some studies are even up to 2% of this group who have played video games might actually qualify for IGD. So the broad approach of addiction, this is a very broad approach. It's just you're continually engaging in unwanted behavior that has a net adverse consequence to you and your life. And addiction, it really is, it's to simplify it, it is something that is, you don't have the ability to consistently abstain from it. It's impairing your behavioral control. It's impairing your ability to tolerate resistance. And over time, you have a diminished recognition of the problems in your life. So video game addiction is a process addiction. In the DSM-5, the only other behavioral addiction is gambling addiction. Now, there are elements of gambling in video games, so many elements of it. You're putting real money into it. You're rolling slot machines in games. And there's a lot of shopping involved also in video games, like virtual shopping, buying things for your own avatar or character that you make. And it's a process addiction, meaning that it's over time, it's a system that is consistent, and it affects and disrupts other areas of your life, like your work, your study, your physical health, your social networks, your daily chores and responsibilities. Now, you can go to the APA or psychiatry.org. I have the link here, but there are 5. So basically, how would someone be diagnosed? And what psychiatrists would do is that it would be indicated by 5 of these 9 indicators over a span of 12 months continuously. So it's not something that would happen for a month and then 7 months you're not really playing, and then last 3 months you're playing again over across 12 months. It's every single month continuously straight for at least 1 year. And this time requirement wasn't actually there 2 years ago or 1 year ago when this was first classified. Time requirement wasn't there, and this is still in contention and debate within the research community. But of these 9, 5 of them have to be consistent and perpetual for the span of 12 months. So preoccupation with gaming, you're absorbed in it. Maybe you're experiencing great euphoria when you're playing and always thinking about it or worrying about it maybe when you're away from it. Withdrawal symptoms, really similar to substance abuse, where if you are away from it, you may feel anxiety or irritability, tolerance. You need to spend more and more time, more increased, like a new novel stimulus. You need more and more of it. You lose control. You lose interest in other hobbies. You continue to game despite being aware of consequences. And there's a lot of secrecy and lying, deceiving family members about how much time you're actually spending. And also you use gaming to actually relieve those negative moods. So it's a cycle. And the cycle where you feel guilt and hopelessness, and you risk losing your job and relationships due to gaming. The World Health Organization has a very similar definition of it, so I will pass on. And here I'd like to present some of the elements of environment and the modality of it, what makes it very unique compared to other addictions. Now, this is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and gaming is something for many of these folks that to them fulfills many of these needs, especially the upper order needs. Now, for those who play competitive gaming, for them, it's actually something to bring in a means of income as well. So this is why there's so much contention and why it's so difficult for individuals to come out of gaming, because for them, it's a form of entertainment. It's a form of connecting with other people. They may become recognized on their online community. It's a way in which they receive respect, and it's a goal that they have in life. And so it fulfills all these order of needs. And so I like to present to you a model here in which, with the lockdowns too, it just precipitated the number of occurrences of those who have struggled with gaming, perhaps even as a coping mechanism for some other issues that they may have had. So if someone is going through stress or a traumatic event, gaming is an easy way to cope. And especially if someone doesn't have the social accountability, you don't have someone to check up on you. And on top of that, you feel stuck, personal, spiritual stagnation, then you are in a danger zone where gaming can be a very unhealthy, even destructive outlet and tendency that you can create and cultivate. It's a system and a pattern behavior. And the modality of it is what really structures it as something that can be addictive, which is, it's very immediate. Mobile gaming, you just open your phone and everybody has a cell phone. It's anonymous, meaning that you're isolated. No one knows about this issue. It's very accessible. It's free, immediately accessible. And you're meeting with other people online. There's a sense of competition online. So there's an intimacy that you built. So the anonymity, accessibility, immediacy, and the intimacy that is formed along with this game behavior, many people who do game for many, many hours, they actually don't admit that they are addicted. For them, they would argue that it's their way of life. And this is the tricky part, because for many of these folks, it's a way of self-actualization. It's the way of connecting in community. And there could be a lot of confusion. And I think there's a lot of self-discovery that can be involved. And I'll give some practical examples right now, actionable steps for parents, individuals, and leaders. First, for individuals, I myself, I like to disclose that I was a high school dropout. I failed and dropped more than half of my courses. My first year in university, I tried my best to read a page of a book. I couldn't even read half a page. I just could not focus because I used to play 10 to 15 hours a day. And I was so addicted to gaming that every single other area of my life was just collapsing. I was living an unsustainable life. And part of my process was to recognize that this is not the way I want to live my life. It's unwanted. And did I feel powerless? Absolutely, yes. I felt powerless. And that's very powerful. I will share in the next slide about continuing on this first point. But I think because of time, I will skip some of these practicals. You can ask me in the Q&A. But hard stop, avoid and eliminate your access. This means permanently deleting your accounts. Give away your technology. Cancel your internet. In fact, at our house, I have 3 kids. We don't have Wi-Fi. I don't have Wi-Fi. And I chose this because I don't want the phone or gaming or internet to be an obstacle, an easy way to just de-stress or like a habit. I don't want it to form into a pattern behavior for my kids. And explore. This is for parents too. Talk to your children. Ask open-ended questions. How are you feeling when you're playing games? What might be your triggers, or why do you go to games? Explore it in yourself. Is it for comfort? Is it because of failure? Is it because of loneliness? Is it stress or anger? Ask yourself, why do you binge game? It's very important to confess to others. And I'd like to say this I say this to everyone I work with. Work produces joy. Find ways to volunteer. Work produces joy. Responsibility cultivates purpose. We all want to run away from responsibility, but that's the exact thing that will give you more life. Now, of course, within this Christian presentation, I have to share, this is from the Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12-step program. And this is something that I had to come to terms with. I admitted, number one, I was powerless over my gaming addiction, and it was consuming me, and I needed a greater power, and that was God. And it was God, through prayer, through others, through Christ, I was able to transform and absolutely change from a high school dropout to, by God's grace, I'm doing my 5th university degree now. And just God is good and powerful. God uses the weak and your weakness for his blessing and his greater good. Practical reflections for parents. It is good to know that you have great influence on your children still. The glory of children is their fathers. Your kids still look up to you as parents. In fact, there's a study done in the US across over 7,000 high school students and university students, and the majority of them, 70 and 80% over, said that parents are still the #1 role model in their lives. So you have a huge responsibility, you have influence. And as your children get older, you will notice that you have less control, but that means that you will have to use more influence. Get to know your kids, ask them questions, ask them how their school day was. And when I do these talks in high schools, I always ask these kids, because I'm curious, how many of you have dinner with your parents at least 3 times a week? And it's a huge majority of them don't. Like 90% of them don't raise their hand, because these high schoolers are not having dinners with their parents at least 3 times a week. And that's huge. Research shows that even just having 3 dinners a week with your kids, adolescent, teen, even young adult kids, helps with so many things, like fighting off loneliness. So have more conversations. If you're a Christian watching this, you are mandated to disciple your children. It is your responsibility. For leaders, it's very important to cultivate a healthy culture in the church or your organization. For example, if someone comes up and discloses something to you, or if something is going around, a lot of times we are suddenly horrified, and there's a lot of gossip that spreads and says, oh my goodness, did you hear so-and-so, this person's child struggles with gaming addiction. Now, allowing that kind of talk to stay within a church, you're really creating a culture of isolation, which is really only going to further precipitate these divisions, and you're not going to actually help with building that community and accountability. I will end there because I have 20 minutes. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, we will go through them at the Q&A at the end.